The room smelled like power. Not metaphorically. Literally, cedarwood, cold marble. And something underneath it all that had no name but sat in the chest like a warning. This was what money that had never been questioned smelled like. This was what it felt like to be inside a world that operated by rules no one had written down because no one needed to. Melissa had been in rooms like this before. She had never made it out of them clean. She kept her eyes forward, her breathing even. Her hands perfectly steady as she crossed the length of the dining room with a morning tea. The estate was still quiet at this hour. That heavy, loaded quiet that lives just before the day begins and everything becomes impossible to take back. She reached across the table. And her sleeve slipped. 2 inches. Maybe 3. Enough. The bruise was ugly. Deep purple at the center, bleeding into sickly green at the edges. The kind of mark that doesn't come from bumping into a doorframe. The kind that comes from fingers. From intention. From someone who wanted to leave a reminder on her skin. She pulled her sleeve down fast. But not fast enough. The entire room shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a degree. The way temperature drops right before a storm. She felt it before she saw it. Jang Hyun-woo had gone completely still. He wasn't reading anymore. The newspaper was flat on the table. His tea was untouched. And he was looking at her, not through her the way he always did, the way men like him looked at women like her, but at her. Directly. Deliberately. Like he had just seen something he wasn't going to pretend he hadn't seen. The silence stretched. "That bruise," he said, and his voice was quiet the way a locked door is quiet. "Wasn't there last night?" The words landed slow and heavy, the way the truth always does when someone finally says it out loud. Melissa felt the ripple move all the way through her body, and she understood in that moment that everything was about to change. Welcome to Afro-K Romance Fairy Tale. On today's episode, you get a dose of betrayal, power, romance, love, unexpected encounters, and a beautiful beginning. If this is your first time here, make sure to like, subscribe, click the notification icon to get a reminder when new amazing stories drop, and send this story to friends and family who you think would love to watch it. And also tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I'd really love to know. Now let's dive back into this amazing story. Melissa Gold did not panic. She had trained herself out of panic a long time ago. Panic was a luxury that belonged to women who had safe places to retreat to. She had not had one of those in 4 years. So instead of panicking, she did what she always did. She counted her breath. She kept her face neutral. She straightened slowly and met his eyes with the practiced calm of a woman who had survived far worse than a man's gaze. "I walked into a shelf," she said. "In the storage room. It was dark." Hyun-woo said nothing. He just looked at her. That still, unhurried look that she was beginning to understand was not coldness. It was something more unsettling than coldness. It was patience. The kind that has already decided it will get what it wants and is simply waiting for the world to catch up. "I'll be more careful," she added. "I didn't ask you to be more careful." The words were quiet. Almost gentle. Almost. "I asked who did it." Something moved through her chest. Fast and uninvited, like a bird startled out of tall grass. She pressed it down. Hard. "No one did anything, sir," she said. "It was an accident." He held her gaze for 3 more seconds. She counted them. Then he picked up his newspaper. Opened it. Like the conversation was over. "Go finish your rounds," he said. Left. She walked the full length of the east corridor before she let herself exhale. Her hands, those perfectly steady hands she had trained so carefully, were trembling slightly at the fingertips. Not because he had frightened her. Because he hadn't believed a single word she said. And the way he had looked at her, like he was going to find out the truth whether she offered it or not, told her something that changed everything. Jang Hyun-woo had been paying attention to her. Not today. Not just this morning. Before. He had been watching long enough to know that the bruise was new. Long enough to notice the difference between last night and this morning. Which meant that all 3 weeks she had spent being invisible inside this estate. Every careful move, every practiced smile, every deliberately unremarkable moment. He had seen all of it. She stopped walking. Stood completely still in the middle of the corridor with the morning light coming through the high windows and landing on the floor in long gold strips. She had come into this estate with one mission. One purpose. She had a plan, clean, tight, almost complete. She was days away from what she needed. And now the most dangerous man in the building had just told her, without saying it in so many words, that she had never once been invisible to him. She pressed her back against the wall, closed her eyes, thought about Park Sung-eun, about what he had taken from her, about the ledger with his name on it and what it meant and why she had sacrificed everything to get here. She thought about all of it deliberately, like pressing on a bruise to remember it still hurts. Then she opened her eyes, straightened her uniform, and walked back into the day like nothing had happened, because that was what Melissa Gold did. She survived. What she didn't know, what she had absolutely no way of knowing as she disappeared around the corner, was that back in the dining room, Jang Hyun-woo had set his newspaper down again the moment she left. He sat in the quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he picked up his phone and made one call. "The new housekeeper," he said when the line connected. "Melissa Gold. I want everything. And I want it done quietly." He hung up, lifted his tea, took the first slow sip. And somewhere behind those unreadable eyes, something that had been dormant for a very long time shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. The next 3 days were a performance. Melissa played her part perfectly. Quieter than before. More careful. She reduced her movements in the restricted wings, kept her interactions short, her expressions pleasant and empty. She was the ideal employee. Present without being noticed. Efficient without being memorable. She was also running out of time and she knew it. Whatever Hyun-woo had set in motion with that phone call, it was moving. She could feel it the way you feel something behind you in the dark. Not seen, not heard, but absolutely real. She had maybe 72 hours before whoever he had called came back with something that unraveled everything. She needed the document. The one in the restricted East office. The one she had been circling for 3 weeks, waiting for the right window. The window was now. On the second evening she almost made it. She had timed it carefully. The security rotation, the staff dinner hour, the 12-minute gap between patrol checks that she had mapped over 2 weeks of quiet observation. She moved through the corridor with a cleaning cart, unhurried, deliberate, a woman doing exactly what she was employed to do. She was 2 doors away from the East office when Mr. O stepped out of the shadow at the end of the hall. He didn't touch her this time. He didn't need to. He just stood there, small, still, with that particular smile that men wear when they are certain of their power over you, and said quietly, "You're in the wrong wing, Miss Gold." She stopped the cart, looked at him. "I have rooms to clean in this wing," she said. "Not tonight," he said. "Tonight you go back to your quarters. You rest. You think carefully about whether this position is still worth what it's costing you." He glanced at her arm, at the sleeve covering the bruise. "Mr. Park sends his regards," he said. Then he walked away. Melissa stood in the corridor for a long moment after he disappeared. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were dry. She had long since run out of tears for Park Sung-jin. She had used the last of them in a bathroom in Busan 18 months ago and made herself a promise she had not broken since. She turned the cart around, went back to her quarters, sat on the edge of the narrow bed in the dark and thought. She was not defeated. She needed to be clear about that. Not in a proud way, not in a stubborn way, but in the way of a woman who has learned to measure her resources accurately and spend them wisely. She was not defeated. She was recalibrating. But she was also alone in a house full of people who served one man, being watched by another man's operative, running out of time from a third direction. She lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. And then, because she was honest with herself even when it was inconvenient, she let herself think about Hyun-woo. About the way he had said, "I didn't ask you to be careful." About the patience in his eyes when he looked at her. About the fact that in 3 weeks inside this estate, surrounded by staff who looked through her and guards who catalogued her and Mr. O who watched her like a problem to be managed, Jang Hyun-woo was the only person who had looked at her like she was a person worth understanding. She hated that it mattered. She hated that she had noticed. She closed her eyes. She was here for the truth, for justice, for the version of herself that Park Sung-jin had tried to erase. She was not here for dark eyes and unreadable silences, and a man who noticed things no one else bothered to see. She was absolutely not here for that. She fell asleep telling herself so. The next morning she walked into the dining room and he was already there, earlier than usual, jacket on like he had somewhere to be. He didn't look up when she entered. She set the tea down, adjusted the cup angle, straightened. "Sit down," he said. She blinked. "Sir, sit." He nodded at the chair across from him. "There's something I want to say to you." Melissa sat. He looked up then. Across the table. Direct and unhurried as always, but something was different this morning. Something in the set of his jaw, the quality of the quiet around him. "You're not safe in this house," he said. The words landed like something dropped from a great height. She opened her mouth. "Don't tell me it was a shelf," he said quietly. "And don't insult either of us by pretending you don't know what I mean." The room held its breath. Melissa looked at Jang Hyanwoo, this man she had come here to use, this obstacle she had filed under means to an end, and felt something inside her chest crack open. Just slightly. Just at one edge. "I don't know what you're referring to," she said. It was the weakest lie she had ever told. He knew it too. She could see it in his eyes. That almost expression, that thing that lived just beneath the surface of his face and almost never made it all the way out. "Someone in my house put their hands on you," he said. Very quietly, very carefully, like each word was being placed exactly where it needed to land. "I don't allow that. Whatever else you think about me or this place, I don't allow that." Melissa said nothing. Because there was nothing to say. Because Jang Hyanwoo had just done the one thing she had not prepared for. Had not accounted for in 8 months of planning. Had no defense against whatsoever. He had been decent to her. And it broke something open that she had no idea how to close. She didn't sleep that night. Not because of Mr. O. Not because of the deadline closing in around her like walls. She had learned to sleep through fear a long time ago. Fear was just noise, and noise could be managed. She didn't sleep because of what Hyanwoo had said. "I don't allow that." 4 words. Simple. Quiet. And yet they had moved through her like something she hadn't felt in so long she had almost forgotten it had a name. She lay in the dark and made herself think clearly. Hyanwoo knowing someone had hurt her was not the same as him knowing who. It was not the same as him knowing why. He was operating on instinct and observation, the same tools she used. And he had reached the right conclusion for the wrong reasons. It didn't mean anything. Couldn't mean anything. She repeated that until it almost felt true. The next morning she arrived at the dining room to find it empty. No Hyanwoo. No newspaper. Just the morning light and the faint smell of cedarwood and cold marble. She set the tray down anyway. Adjusted the cup. Turned to leave. "You're early." She spun around. He was standing in the doorway to the adjoining corridor. Jacket off, collar open, like he had come straight from somewhere that hadn't given him time to be composed. He looked different without the armor of his stillness fully in place. Younger. Less like a man who had decided never to need anything. More like a man who was tired of that decision. "I can come back," she said. "No." He walked in. Took his seat. "Stay." It wasn't a command. It was almost, not quite, but almost a request. He stayed. He wrapped both hands around the warm cup and looked at the window. The city was gray this morning, low clouds pressing down over the estate like the sky had something on its mind. "How long have you been in Seoul?" he asked. She blinked. 4 years. "You like it here." "I liked what it was supposed to be," she said. And then stopped. 'Cause that was true. That was actually completely true. And she hadn't meant to say it. He turned and looked at her. Something shifted in his expression. Not much. Just enough to change the whole feeling of the room. "What was it supposed to be?" he asked. And the way he asked it, quiet, genuine, like he actually wanted to know and had nowhere else to be, made Melissa Gold do something she had not done in 4 years of careful survival. She answered honestly. "A beginning," she said. "I came here for a beginning." The silence that followed was different from the other silences. Softer somehow. Less like a locked door and more like an open window. "Did you find one?" he asked. She looked at him across the table. This man she had come to this house to expose, whose world she was here to dismantle, whose trust she was systematically working to earn for reasons that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with a debt she was owed by someone else. "I don't know yet," she said. It was the most honest thing she had said since she walked through the service entrance 3 weeks ago. Hyun-woo nodded slowly, like that answer made sense to him. Like he understood something about beginnings that hadn't worked out the way they were supposed to. He picked up his tea, looked back at the window, and Melissa stood in that quiet dining room and felt the ground shifting under her feet, slowly, irrevocably, in a direction she had not planned for and could not afford. She found the opening she needed that afternoon. Hyun-woo was out. The East Wing was running a reduced staff rotation. She had noted it 3 days ago and filed it carefully. Mr. O was not on the grounds. She had confirmed that twice. 12 minutes. That was all she needed. She moved quickly but without rushing. Urgency and panic looked the same on security cameras, and she knew the difference mattered. The cleaning cart, the East Corridor, the restricted office at the end of the hall that she had been circling for 3 weeks like a planet caught in orbit. The lock was a card system. She had the duplicate, a copied access card she had lifted from the head housekeeper station on her second day and spent a week and a half waiting for the right moment to use. The door opened. She was inside in 4 seconds. The office was exactly as she had expected from the architectural plan she had memorized. Large desk, filing cabinets along the left wall, a secondary safe behind the landscape painting that every man with something to hide put behind a landscape painting. She didn't need the safe. She needed the third filing cabinet. Bottom drawer. The one that held physical copies of partnership agreements that had never been digitized because some things were too sensitive for servers. She found it in 40 seconds. Park Sungjin, Jang Hyun-woo. A joint venture agreement dated 3 years ago. Witnessed. Notarized. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was even. She photographed every page with a small device she had carried taped to the inside of her uniform for 2 weeks and felt nothing. Nothing, except the clean, cold satisfaction of a plan finally arriving at its destination. She was done. She had what she came for. All she had to do now was walk out of this estate tonight, deliver the documents to the contact who had been waiting 8 months for exactly this package, and disappear into the next version of herself. She closed the filing cabinet, turned around, and found Jang Hyun-woo standing in the doorway. The world stopped. Not dramatically. Not with sound. A stop. Like a held breath. Like the moment between lightning and thunder when you don't yet know how close it is. He was looking at the filing cabinet. At her hands. At the small device she had not yet had time to conceal. His face was completely still. That devastating, unreadable stillness that she now understood was not the absence of emotion but the absolute mastery of it. His eyes moved to hers. And in them, beneath the stillness, beneath everything, she saw it. Not anger. Not cold calculation. Real, unguarded human hurt. Gone in a second. Sealed back behind the wall so fast she almost convinced herself she had imagined it. Almost. Melissa, he said. Just her name. Nothing else. And somehow that was the most devastating thing he could have said. She opened her mouth, closed it. There was no version of this moment that a rehearsed answer could survive. She had planned for discovery. She had contingencies, exit strategies, cover stories layered like armor. She had prepared for every possible version of this moment. She had not prepared for him to say her name like that. Like it cost him something. How long? He said quietly. Not moving from the doorway. Like he couldn't decide yet whether to come closer or step back. How long have you been here for this? It wasn't a question. She lifted her chin. Since the beginning, she said. The words were clean, direct. She owed him that much. Something moved across his face. Fast, complex, too many things at once to name. Then it was gone and he was still again, and the room was just a room. And they were just two people standing on opposite sides of something that had just broken irreparably. Or so Melissa thought. Who sent you? He said. No one sent me, she said. I came on my own. For what? She held his gaze. Park Sungjin. The name landed in the room like a stone through glass. And this time the thing that moved across Hyun-woo's face was not hurt. Was not anger. It was something that looked terrifyingly like understanding. He looked at her for a long moment. Her arm. At the bruise she was still carrying under her sleeve. He hurt you, Hyun-woo said. Not a question. Yes, she said. One word. The truest thing she had ever said in this house. The silence that followed was the longest of her life. Then Hyun-woo stepped aside from the doorway. "Come with me," he said. "Before we go any further into this story, drop a comment right now. Would you have walked out or stayed? Because what Melissa does next changes everything. Tell me what you would do. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button. You do not want to miss what's coming." Not because she had no other choice. She always had other choices. She had built her entire survival around that principle. She followed him because something in the way he had stepped aside from that doorway told her that what was coming next was not a threat. She didn't know what it was. She followed him anyway. He led her through a part of the estate she hadn't mapped yet. A quieter wing, away from the staff quarters and the formal rooms, where the corridors were narrower and the light was warmer and everything felt less like a statement and more like a place someone actually lived. He stopped at a door at the end of the hall, opened it, and gestured for her to go in. It was a sitting room. Personal. A bookshelf covering one entire wall. 2 low chairs angled toward a window that looked out over the garden. Nothing like the formal rooms she cleaned every morning. This felt private, real. Like a room that didn't know it was inside a Mafia estate. "Sit," he said. He sat. He remained standing. Moved to the window. Looked out at the garden the way he had looked out at the city that gray morning. Like the outside world was something he observed but no longer fully belonged to. "Park Sung-jin is not my partner," he said. Melissa went still. "That agreement you photographed," he continued without turning around, "is 3 years old. We dissolved the arrangement 8 months after signing it. I discovered what he was. What he did to people." The room was very quiet. "I've been building a case against him," Hyun-woo said. "For 2 years. Melissa stared at his back. At the straight line of his shoulders. At the absolute stillness of a man delivering information he knew was going to detonate something. "You've been investigating him," she said slowly. "Yes. For 2 years. Yes." She let that land. Let it move through everything she had built. Every assumption, every conclusion, every carefully constructed understanding of what this house was and who this man was and what she was here to do. She felt it all shift, restructure, rearrange itself around this single new fact like a kaleidoscope turning. "The ledger," she said. "His name on the Jang Syndicate ledger. Was planted," Hyun-woo said. "By him. To protect himself if I ever moved against him. To make it look like we were still connected. Like any evidence against him was evidence against me too." He finally turned from the window. Looked at her directly. "He's been using my name as a shield for 2 years. And I have been trying to find a way to remove it without warning him I was coming." Melissa looked at him. At this man she had spent 8 months hunting. This man she had walked into his house ready to expose and destroy and use as a stepping stone toward justice. This man who had noticed her bruise before she noticed he was watching. Who had said "I don't allow that" with a quiet certainty that had broken something open in her chest. "You're not what I thought you were," she said. Came out softer than she intended. Something moved across his face. "Neither are you," he said. The silence between them was different now. Not the charged silence of discovery or the brittle silence of confrontation. Something gentler. More dangerous in a completely different way. "He has someone inside this house," Melissa said. She kept her voice even. Professional. Because they needed to stay in that lane, information, strategy, facts. Not whatever else was quietly happening in this room that she was not going to name. "Mr. O. He's been reporting to Park Sung-jin since before I arrived. He's the one who," she stopped. "Who hurt you?" Hyun-woo said. "Yes." He nodded once, slowly, and the quality of his stillness changed, became something colder, more deliberate. The stillness of a man making a decision. "How long have you been running from him?" Hyun-woo said. 4 years, she said. Under different names. In different cities. He paused. "He always finds the people who try to leave." "Not this time," Hyun-woo said. 3 words. Quiet. Absolute. Like a door closing on every version of events where Park Sung-jin won. Melissa looked at him across the small private room with the books and the warm light and the garden outside the window and felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. real, irrational, completely inconvenient safety. In the sitting room of a man who ran a criminal syndicate, who she had broken into whose office not 20 minutes ago, who had every reason in the world to put her out on the street and every reason beyond that to do worse. She felt safe. And because she was Melissa Gold and she had survived by being honest with herself even when it hurt, she let herself feel it. Just for a moment. Just in the private space behind her eyes where no one else could see. "Why are you helping me?" she said. Hyun-woo looked at her for a long moment. Something moved behind his eyes. That complex, layered thing that she was beginning to learn was his version of vulnerability. Something he did not show often. Something he was choosing carefully and deliberately to show her now. "Because someone should have," he said simply. "A long time ago. She should have left that night. She had what she came for. The photographs, the evidence, the contact waiting for her delivery. She had her exit strategy memorized. She had a bag that could be packed in 4 minutes and a route out of the estate that bypassed every camera she had mapped in 3 weeks. She should have left. Instead she sat across from Jang Hyun-woo in that small warm room until the city outside went dark and the garden became a reflection in the glass, and they talked. Really talked. Not the careful, loaded exchanges of the dining room. Not the performance she had been running for 3 weeks. He told her about the Jang Syndicate, what it was, what it had been under his father, what he had spent 6 years trying to quietly dismantle from the inside without the whole structure collapsing on the people caught within it. He told her about Park Sung-jin, how they had met, how the partnership had seemed legitimate, how he had discovered the truth in pieces over months and what each piece had cost him. She told him about Abuja, about Seoul, about the scholarship and the piano and the girl she had been before she learned that some men treat a woman's brightness like something to extinguish. She didn't tell it like a tragedy. She told it the way she had learned to carry it, with a kind of clear-eyed practicality that did not ask for pity. He didn't offer pity. He offered something better. He listened like what she was saying mattered. Like she mattered. Not her usefulness, not her beauty, not what she could give him or what she represented. Or the specific, complicated, extraordinary person inside the uniform and the false name and the carefully constructed survival. At some point the tea came, brought by a staff member who knocked quietly and left quickly and asked no questions about why the master of the house was sitting in the private room with the housekeeper at 10 o'clock at night. At some point Melissa realized she had been talking for 2 hours. She stopped, looked at him. He was watching her with that expression, the one she had no word for. The one that lived just beneath his surface and almost never made it all the way out. It was out now. Fully. Without the wall. "You're staring," she said. "I know," he said. He didn't stop. Her heart did something complicated. "Hyun-woo. Don't," he said quietly. "Don't tell me it's complicated. Don't tell me there are reasons. I know there are reasons." He leaned forward slightly. Just slightly. "I've spent 6 years making decisions based on reasons. I'm tired of it." The air between them was warm and still and full of something that had been building since the morning she walked through the service entrance with her rehearsed story, and her hidden mission, and her 3 weeks of careful invisibility that had fooled everyone except him. "This is not a good idea," she whispered. "No," he agreed. "It isn't." He reached across the small space between them, slowly, giving her every opportunity to move away. And touched, just touched with the back of 2 fingers, the place on her jaw just below her cheekbone. Barely contact. The gentlest thing she had ever felt from a man's hand. She didn't move away. "Melissa," he said. Just her name. The way he had said it in the office doorway, like it cost him something. Like he had been saving it. "This changes nothing about the situation," she said. Her voice was not as steady as she needed it to be. "I know," he said. "Park Sung-jin is still out there. I know. Mr. O is still in this house. Not for long," he said. And the quiet certainty in that, the absolute undecorated promise, moved through her like heat. She looked at him. This man who was not what she had thought he was. This man who had seen her from the beginning and said nothing and waited. This man who had noticed a bruise on her arm and made it his business when the entire world had spent 4 years making her invisible. She made a decision. Not the careful, calculated kind she was good at. The other kind. The kind that lives in the chest and bypasses the mind entirely. She closed the remaining distance between them. And when she kissed him, it was not soft or tentative or uncertain. It was the kiss of a woman who had survived 4 years of running and was finally, in the most unexpected place imaginable, choosing to stop. He kissed her back like he had been waiting, like he had known from the very first morning that it was going to end here. Outside the window the city glittered in the dark, indifferent and beautiful, and in a small warm room at the heart of the most dangerous estate in Seoul, two people who had both spent years being careful chose, for one suspended and irreversible moment, not to be. Morning came the way it always did in the Jang estate. Cold light through tall windows, the smell of cedarwood and marble, the quiet that lived before the day began and made everything feel possible and impossible at the same time. Melissa stood at the window of her staff quarters and watched the garden come into focus as the darkness lifted. She had not slept. Not because of fear this time. Not because of deadlines or contingencies or the constant low hum of a plan running out of runway. Because of him. Because of the way he had said her name. Because of the way he had touched her jaw like she was something worth being careful with. Because of everything that small warm room had held last night that she had absolutely no framework for and no safe place to put. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. She was a woman with a mission. A woman with a contact waiting. A woman with photographs on a device taped to the inside of her uniform and 4 years of survival riding on the next 48 hours. She was also, helplessly and inconveniently, a woman who had kissed Jang Hyun-woo in a room full of books and warm light and felt the ground shift permanently beneath her feet. She needed to think. She needed to be smarter than her feelings. She had always been smarter than her feelings. She pushed off the window, straightened, began to plan. She found Hyun-woo in the main corridor at 7 in the morning, moving with purpose. Jacket on, jaw set, the full armor of his composure back in place. 2 of his senior staff flanked him. He stopped when he saw her. The 2 of them looked at each other across the corridor for exactly 2 seconds. A whole conversation happened in those 2 seconds. She saw it move through his eyes. The acknowledgement, the warmth, the deliberate and necessary setting aside of warmth because the day required something different from both of them. She gave him a small nod. He returned it. Then, "Mr. O has been removed from the estate," he said. Quiet. Direct. For her ears. As of an hour ago. She felt something release in her chest. "And Park Sung-jin. My people moved tonight," he said. "The case is complete. It has been complete for 6 weeks. I was waiting for one final piece." He paused. "You found it for me." She stared at him. The partnership agreement. The original. The one he thought was the only physical copy. Something moved in his expression. That almost smile that she was beginning to understand was one of his rarest things. He destroyed his own copy 2 years ago. "He didn't know I kept mine." Melissa let that settle. Let the full shape of it assemble in her mind. 8 months of her planning, 3 weeks of her risk, and Hyun-woo had been 2 steps ahead of all of it, moving quietly toward the same destination from the opposite direction. "You could have told me," she said. "You could have told me," he said back. She almost smiled. "Almost. What happens now?" she said. "Tonight Park Sung-jin answers for everything he has done," Hyun-woo said. "To every person he has done it to." His eyes held hers. "Including you. For years. 4 years of running and hiding and rebuilding and carrying a name that wasn't hers and a mission that had cost her everything. 4 years of being a woman that Park Sung-jin had tried to erase." She felt it move through her. Not dramatically, not in a wave. Quietly. The way relief actually arrives when it is real. Like something setting down a weight it had been carrying so long it had forgotten what it felt like not to. Her eyes went bright. Just briefly. Just for a moment. She blinked it back. "Melissa," Hyun-woo said softly. "I'm fine," she said. "I know you are," he said. "That's not why I said your name." She looked at him. And there it was again. That expression, full and unguarded, the wall completely down. In the middle of the corridor. In front of his staff. In the full light of morning with the whole complicated day ahead of them. He was not hiding it. He was choosing deliberately and openly, not to hide it. Something expanded in her chest so suddenly it almost hurt. "We have things to discuss," she said carefully. After, he agreed. The word was a promise. That night the Jiang estate was quiet. Whatever Hyenwu set in motion happened in the way that things happened in his world. Without drama, without visible machinery, with the clean efficiency of a man who had been planning for a very long time and executed without hesitation when the moment arrived. Melissa sat in the small warm room with the books and waited. At 11:15 her phone lit up. A message from her contact, 3 words. "It is done." She set the phone down on her knee. Looked at the bookshelf. At the garden beyond the dark window. At the room that had held, just last night, the most honest conversation she had in 4 years. Park Sung-jin was finished. The evidence, hers and Hyenwoo's combined, 2 separate investigations arriving at the same truth from opposite sides, was more than enough. He would not find his way out of it. He would not find his way back to her. It was over. She waited for the enormous feeling she had imagined this moment would carry. The triumph. The closure. The sense of a debt finally paid and a chapter finally closed. What came instead was quieter than that. Simpler. Just a slow, deep exhale. The kind that comes from somewhere so far down you didn't know you were holding it. And then the door opened and Hyenwoo walked in. He looked tired. Really tired. Not the composed, controlled tiredness of a man managing his image, but the real kind. The kind that lives in the eyes. He had done something difficult tonight, and he was not pretending otherwise. He sat in the chair across from her. Neither of them spoke for a moment. "It's done," she said. "It's done," he confirmed. The quiet between them was the softest thing she had ever sat inside. "I owe you an apology," she said. "No," he said immediately. "I came into your house under false pretenses. I lied to you for 3 weeks. I broke into your office. Melissa." His voice was gentle but firm. "You were a woman trying to survive. You used every tool you had. I would have done the same. I have done the same." She looked at him. "The question," he said carefully, "is not what brought you here." He held her gaze. "The question is what you want to do now that it's over." And there it was. The real question. The one underneath everything. Underneath the mission and the bruise and the ledger and the photographs and the small warm room and the kiss that had rearranged something in her permanently. What did Melissa Gold want? Not the mission. Not the plan. Not the next name and the next city and the next version of herself assembled from scratch. What did she really honestly in the private space behind her survival want? She looked at Jiang Hyenwoo. At the tiredness in his eyes and the warmth underneath it. At the man who had seen her from the very first morning and waited, patiently, unhurriedly, for her to see him back. "I want to stop running," she said. It was the simplest thing she had ever said. He reached across the space between them, slowly the way he always moved, giving her every opportunity to decide, and took her hand. Not dramatically, not like a declaration, just held it, like it was something he intended to keep doing. She looked down at their hands. His pale and steady. Hers, dark and equally steady. 2 people who had spent years being the stillest thing in every room they entered finally, choosing to be still together. "This is still complicated," she said quietly. "Extremely," he agreed. "Your world is not a simple place. Neither is yours. I don't even know if Melissa Gold is the name I want to keep." "Then we'll find you a new one," he said simply. "One that fits." She looked up at him. And for the first time since she walked through the service entrance of the Jiang estate with her rehearsed story and her hidden mission and her careful, practiced, impenetrable composure, Melissa Gold smiled. Not the professional one. Not the warm and empty performance she had deployed 100 times in 3 weeks. The real one. The one that started in her eyes before it reached her mouth and changed her whole face when it arrived. Hyenwoo looked at it like it was the most remarkable thing he had ever seen. Like he intended to spend a considerable amount of time making sure it happened again. Some people walk into the wrong place for the right reasons and find something they were never looking for. Melissa came to the Jiang estate hunting justice and found, in the most unexpected man in the most unexpected world, the one thing 4 years of running had almost made her forget existed. The possibility of being known. And staying anyway. So tell me, did you see that twist coming? Did you think Hyenwoo was the villain all along? Or did you suspect something deeper was hiding underneath that stillness? And what about Melissa? Was she wrong to lie her way in, or does survival justify everything? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, wrecked you, or made you feel something you weren't expecting, share it. Send it to someone who needs a good story today. And if you are not subscribed yet, this is your sign. Hit that button, click the notification bell, and come back for the next episode because the next story is already waiting, and I promise you it is going to be even more intense than this one. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, the most dangerous thing in any room is a person who has decided to stop being afraid.